Welcome to the YSDS Life Science Podcast. I'm your host, John Coleman. Today, we will explore and discuss perhaps one of the most overlooked challenges within the industry, which is the cold chain logistics. With me today, we have a special guest. It's Niklas Prager, who is the CEO of Smartcella. Smartcella, which is a company that delivers state-of-the-art cell therapies to the market. Niklas, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. And of course, I did my homework prior to this talk today. So I looked through your LinkedIn. You are a very experienced man with vast experience.
Old, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that not too old, but I mean, you've had several positions within the whole ecosystem of life science. You've had C-level positions at biotech companies. You are a board member of many companies, and also I saw that you have a logistics background as well for some time.
Yeah.
So, do you mind telling us more about yourself, your background, experiences, and how you ended up at Smartcella?
Well, I've been, as you said, in most parts of the life sciences industries, including pharma services, then with Envirotainer, which I was chairman and then CEO of for a few years. So cold chain is close to my heart. But I've also been in big pharma internationally and in Sweden, in biotech and also medtech. And Smartcella is actually a combination of a medical technologies company or a medical device company with a very innovative device for direct delivery of pharmaceuticals into target tissue and tumors and organs, but also cell and gene therapy, as you mentioned. And for me, it was an unresistible opportunity when this came up a couple of years ago to really develop these fantastic technologies and to build a new large Swedish life sciences company.
Great, thanks for the intro. Perhaps we'll jump straight into the hot topic of the challenges of cold chain logistics. And just to mention, when we talk about cold chain logistics, cold chain, of course, we mean then everything that goes from minus 196 degrees, the cryo temperatures, to ultra low with the dry ice shipments, up to, in some cases, incubation temperature. So that's what we mean with cold chain. Some call it temp chain nowadays, but we'll stick to cold chain.
Yeah.
So when you are then, I mean, most companies, the smaller biotechs, they eventually get to a phase when you need to start moving shipments around the world. It becomes a necessity to utilize a logistics provider. Before that happens, and when that happens, do you feel, do you get your sleep that you're supposed to prior to that shipment? Or what's your gut feeling? Do you get nervous before those kind of shipments?
Well, I mean, if you work with a good partner, that's the whole point, right? That you're not supposed to get nervous. So I think the importance there is that you worked for a long time together before that first shipment, and making sure that it's not going to be a surprise to anyone what happens during that first shipment, but rather having the shipment planning being as important as the whole CMC development, where you do your production planning and how you start scaling up your production to be able to produce for example, the first clinical batch then that you're going to be using in a clinical trial, sending that over. You will have practiced along the way sending for lab analysis around the world, and you will hopefully have had a very solid collaboration in developing the logistics that you will eventually then use for those first clinical batches that are going to be the most important ones for you. That first shipment going into the clinic, going into a patient, that's serious business, right? It's going into a human's body, and we need to take that seriously. That requires close collaboration and long-term planning, and not to be an ad hoc, okay, now it's time to ship, let's look around, see who can do this or who has the cheapest price. That's not how it works.
It's basically building some kind of trust together with a partner prior to that first shipment then. But how would you say, I mean, it's easy also to say to build a trust with a subcontractor or a vendor, but How do you build that trust throughout the whole process from research and development to what you say when you finally have that first shipment that's going to be used and for human beings? How do you build the trust with a partner?
I think it starts at some point. It starts with some kind of reputation by the provider that they've done this before. They've worked with someone that you worked with them before, so that you're introduced to a partner one way or the other through some kind of reputation. But then, to me at least, it's about working closely together, as I said, in the planning phase. And for us, I'll take cell therapies as an example. Then when we have done our testing of our process for production of these cell therapies for human use, we're producing heart cells, so progenitor cells for the heart that are going to be used in patients with heart failure to repair the heart. What we've done along the way is that we worked on a process that's supposed to optimize then the production, both in terms of quality and in terms of yield. In that process, we're sending these samples for different kinds of lab analysis. So in that process, we worked very closely with, in this case, you, to also then test how is that transport going to happen in the most effective way? How do we ship it to Boston or to London or whatever this needs to go for the analysis? That then leads over to planning. How are we going to ship when we have these clinical batches, when they need to go to several clinics in parallel? We have one batch that's now produced. It's going to go out to 5 different clinics for a clinical trial, or it's going to go to a CRO and then from there out to 5 clinical sites. How are we going to do that? How do we make sure that from pickup all the way to the recipient, that they have their cryofreezers ready? They're ready to receive it also, not just for us to, okay, now we delivered it at your doorstep, now it's your problem. It's not. It's going to be our problem all the way through to having it in the patient's body. And that's why it's so important for us to work with you early on, as I said, to build that trust that we can do it in these small steps of sending smaller shipments that are not going into human bodies, where, yes, failure is no good. For sure, failure is never a good thing, but it's not as critical as it will be when it actually goes into the patient's body. So for me, trust comes from working together and testing it, but also planning together and seeing and believing that you are taking this as seriously as I am. That there's a person on the other end for me and my team to talk to, or a team of people to talk to, and not mailboxes or chats or whatever, because these things happen in real time, and there needs to be real time response by people who care.
Great insight. I did this presentation in Finland 2 or 3 weeks ago on that specific topic of the biggest reasons for product failure, and I highlighted 4 reasons, and one of them was actually customs. And I was a bit surprised that the talks after that presentation, that people were a bit surprised that customs was one of the biggest reasons for product failure. But then again, as we discussed more, it's not actually the customs that is the root cause for the deviations. If you go back from the start, then why products are delayed and have temp excursions is because it's delayed in customs. But the delay in customs is most of the time due to insufficient documentation.
Absolutely.
And that goes back to what you say regarding the planning stage here. I mean, we want to see that we do the planning stage prior to a shipment weeks before we actually make that pickup, to in the end have a smooth customs clearance and then pre-clearance.
And again, you probably want to make a test shipment,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
That's not as critical as the one that you're actually shipping to the patient, because there could be things that you didn't understand that you actually learn along the way. As I said before, that it's also learning by doing, and do not learn from the first very, very important shipment and running into all the problems with that one. So no, for sure, customs, and I've learned it the hard way also, not with cell therapies, but with medical devices, where If you don't fill it out the right way, there's something physically lying around at customs that they don't know what to do with, and it's because you didn't fill out the forms correctly. I mean, you can't blame anyone else. You need to understand what customs work like there, and you want a partner that can support and help you with that, because obviously we're not experts in customs documentation. We rely on our partner to be experts in that, but we need to work together because you're not experts in our product, and how do you report correctly on those in that documentation? So
Exactly.
it's a collaboration.
Yeah. So the planning phase here. Why do you think shippers or biotech companies or similar companies, why aren't they inviting the logistics provider earlier? What's the reason for this, you think?
I think perhaps it's lack of knowledge and understanding of that part of the value chain, or the sort of the product life cycle, because we are experts in product development, R&D, and then to some extent in manufacturing, depending on what kind of organization you are. If we have our own manufacturing, some use an external party even for manufacturing. And then you're even further removed from the product or the end product. So I think then there's a chance or a risk that you too late understand that, okay, now we need to solve for shipment, and that you don't fully understand the complexity of that, and hence you turn to a partner and you look at the ones that are the usual suspects in this area, that, okay, who does shipments? Okay, so you call one of the large companies. You tell them that, okay, we need to have this shipped from A to B. And they say, oh, we can do that. And they come and pick it up. And then all of a sudden it's stuck somewhere, either due to customs, or they didn't fully understand how important it was that it didn't get stuck on tarmac at an airport and at a transfer, because they were routing it together with all these other material that they were, reloading in Dubai on its way to whatever. And all of a sudden it's 32 degrees on tarmac, and this stuff couldn't be out more than 2 hours. And they didn't know, because you hadn't told them that it was important, because you had no idea they were going to reload at it, So it's, I think many times, just a lack of understanding of the complexity of the transport itself, and being far removed from the actual the actual production planning, and leaving it in the hands of someone that believed that they can do it, but didn't fully understand, because they weren't informed about the sensitivity of the product and how to best do it. I think it's not obviously that people don't care. Is typically that they don't fully understand the difficulties.
They don't know. They don't. It's lack of knowledge.
Absolutely.
About the industry. So we also discuss a lot the cost versus the risks. I mean, these transports, they are expensive. Using the white glove services, the courier companies, versus, as you said, one of the maybe bigger express companies. I mean, it's really expensive. How do you balance? Do you have a budget? And then you need to assure that you meet the budget expectations, and also then deliver the quality in terms of transports. How can you balance those two in a good way?
Yeah, I mean, there are many aspects to that, but I mean, you mentioned budget. So if you don't understand how complex and difficult it is, you'll under budget. And then it'll be a problem when you then go into actual contract negotiations, because you hadn't realized how expensive it is if you want to do this right. And then there's a risk that you'll choose a cheaper option, which won't meet your requirements, and you'll have failures and problems along the way. So again, it goes back to understanding the importance, and hence budgeting properly. But I would also say that if you look at the industry as a whole, and you include big pharma and the global companies, they generally understand this extremely well, and have big groups of people that work with this, exactly as you and I are talking about now, as integral as the CMC planning. You have logistics departments working on how we're going to transport this. And my experience at Envirotainer, which was certainly not a low-cost provider, more on the other end, I really never had cost as a main issue in our discussions. Of course, everyone tries to get as good of a price as possible, But quality will always be more important than price when you're dealing with things that are going into human bodies. You cannot say that, oh, we'll take the chance, or, it doesn't really matter, or things like, that it doesn't exist. Quality is always at the forefront of any planning and any pricing negotiation. So I think showing what you can do and delivering on that will be much, much more important than trying to have a low price. And from a pharma company or biotech company perspective, it should be a focus on the quality. And if you look at the cost of production, the cost of the logistics will always be a very minor part. We're talking about, maybe 1 or 2% in my experience of the total cost of the product. Obviously, it differs a little bit between what product you have. But if you have batches of product that costs several million, and even per patient costs of maybe 100,000 SEK or even more than that, the transport of that in the end, even if that costs a lot of money compared to sending a letter with UPS, it's still going to be a very low cost relative to the value of that product and the importance of the integrity of the product. So for those reasons, I don't think, price gets too much attention in that context sometimes.
That's good to hear. So basically, you want us to charge you even more than the
that you can always negotiate in the end, but you want to make it work first, and then you can start discussing how big the margin should be for the provider.
Yeah, no, that's good. Quality first and service first. How and also these cost related. If something wouldn't go as planned, and let's say we have a temp excursion for one of these products, then it's not only then, as you say, the cost for the actual production. That's a huge cost for you, but also, as we've seen, all the people involved, all the stakeholders not delivering the product in time. You have researchers, you have of course patients, and you have many people involved in writing, maybe CAPA reports, corrective and preventive actions going forward, and all these kind of things. So it's a huge hidden cost also included in this when things doesn't go as planned. So
absolutely,
you have your product in-house, in storage, you have control of it, you have possession of your goods, and then all of a sudden you need to hand it over to somebody else. So I think it's important there so even though you lose possession of the goods, but if you have a good partner, a good contact, you still have control of your product, even though it's handed over to the logistics provider. And we view it just the same way as when we hand in shipments to, for example, the terminal at Stockholm Arlanda. We lose the possession of the shipment, but we should never lose the control of it. And you see all these new tech providers, they are talking a lot about live tracking. You can include live tracking with real conditioning reports continuously, just to see the condition of the actual product during transit. And if something would go wrong, we can actually act upon that potential deviation before it happens.
And that's the important part that you're mentioning last, right? Because it's so easy to get carried away by the tech that, okay, we've got monitors now all across this shipment, so we'll know exactly if there's a degree temperature deviation.
Exactly.
Well, that's fantastic, but can you do something about it if it deviates? That's the important stuff that I want to know as the CEO of the company owning the goods. So yeah, I love the tech, but I still want the person behind there that plans for what we're going to do when that tech tells me something has gone wrong.
Exactly. No, I totally agree. And that's what we hear also from the industry is like, here you have the tech companies with the hardware, and they also have the software, and they alert then people in the organization and different stakeholders about something is about to deviate here with the temperature, for example. But it's exactly as you say, who's going to do what? Who's going to call the terminal in Munich and say, hey guys, you put the batch here or the shipment in the wrong temperature? Who will move that product from the freezer to a refrigerator, for example?
Yes.
And I think that's part of the... And there's a lot of contract writing, and we have something called, as you know, the quality agreement that we sign with our clients. And one important thing there is to determine the responsibilities in the responsibility table. And this is one thing that should be included in there always. Who actually acts on potential deviations during a transport? Because you shouldn't take that for granted now for other clients using maybe other logistics providers. Not all logistics providers act and do work that way. So,
absolutely not. That was out of their hands, so it's not our fault.
Exactly.
No, I agree. Super important.
Yeah.
And just I came to think of also as we spoke now, one important thing when you plan for your logistics chain early on in your production planning, what you can do and should do also, obviously, is understand that things will happen.
Yeah.
So you need to try to the best of your ability, test your product to make sure that the stability is as wide as possible so you can tolerate certain deviations and know that it doesn't impact quality. So the better you understand the potential risks and what you will expose your product to with things that you can't control, what can you then tolerate? That is an important part of that early planning as well.
Good. Interesting. If you could fix one thing, I mean, if you could be a small tech thing or a process thing, or if you dream big, with your vast experience and how you've seen everything evolving, and should that be clinical trials or the development of advanced therapies, one thing that you could fix, what would that be within the big industry?
Well,
preferably within logistics as well, if you may.
It's difficult. Like you said, you could play God and cure all diseases and stuff like that. But maybe, well, within logistics, well, I think one thing that would have an impact across the industry would be this thing, particularly for smaller companies, to better understand these challenges and to involve, as we've discussed before, logistics earlier on in the planning of manufacturing and seeing logistics as part of your manufacturing and bringing it to patients involves complex processes also of logistics and having that be a bigger part maybe of the understanding and the planning. I think that would help a lot for particularly smaller companies that are maybe going through this for the first time. I don't think big pharma, I think things work relatively well. They can for sure improve also, but I think the biggest impact would be if smaller companies involved the logistics planning earlier.
Great. So, that's a good advice to then others as well within the same segment to introduce and welcome the logistics provider at an earlier stage for optimal outcome then. Great. Niklas, thanks for joining this podcast. It's been interesting topics, and thanks for your insights in the cold chain logistics.
Thanks for having me.
You have been listening to YSDS Life Science Podcasts, a 3-part series where we have highlighted and explored the challenges within cold chain logistics. If you found one of these topics interesting or need support with your upcoming shipments, please do not hesitate reaching out to us at YSDS or follow us on LinkedIn.